So it's day 4, I think. I think I'm going to stop counting days because I've lost track already. It's not actually that cold. But I was coming to a party yesterday, so I went to the barber's and he cut off way too much of my hair. So that's the reason that I'm sitting here looking like Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's not actually that cold, to be fair. And my dilemma is whether or not to use raised beds. Now, as I said before, I started off this channel in my garden and I built 4 raised beds. See, I've built 3. That's 2 there. Another one over here. Yes, looking a bit tired, but as I said before, I don't want to empty them because they become a cat litter for the local cats, so I leave them with a bit of stuff in, and then I continued along here because I plant in this section here right the way around. Raised bed at the back. This raised bed here, they all look like they need a bit more compost. Side, there's a little section. Because I didn't actually research it, just thought that was the thing you do. Also, it was lawn, so I didn't actually kill the lawn and put compost straight on top. What I did was I effectively cut a section out for my raised beds. I'll show you in a sec. And I filled it, I didn't fill it, I added compost to it as for the growing medium. Now I just assumed that was what you did, so when I got my allotment plot, I thought, right, I looked at the space of what I can put 8, I'd say, raised beds here, but what I remember from doing the raised beds in my garden is it's quite an expense, so I don't necessarily want to buy the timber. It's unlikely, just looking around the plot and people that I know, that I'll be able to get it from anywhere else, so I'm going to have to go and buy the timber, and it will cost for 8 beds a pretty penny, maybe 100 quid, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, but I'm looking at that 150 quid I think in my mind. Bearing in mind I've got my pot and I've just bought a shed, and I fortunately didn't buy a greenhouse because, as I said, I wanted one, but I, in writing, which is what you have to do at my allotment, asked to put up a shed and a greenhouse, and they said I can put a shed up and no greenhouse, which is a bit of an annoyance really, because I only asked for that because I could see that on other plots, but it is what it is. I'm new, I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. If they're saying that, then that's what they're saying. So fortunately I didn't actually go out and buy one, which I was going to do, because they're obviously cheaper to buy sort of December time than they will be if we try and buy a greenhouse in sort of February, March, when everybody's starting to use them. It's going to be a bit more expensive, so fortunately I didn't spend on one in the sale. But my assumption was that that was what you did. You built raised beds and you filled them with compost and you started growing. And come to find out, that's not necessarily the case. Some people have really poor soil. Some people, you might put a raised bed straight on top of grass, or you might put a raised bed in a concreted area, fill it with compost, and you can grow in there, as long as it's not depending on how high your raised bed is, as long as you're it can sustain the roots of the plants that you're putting in it. So from my little bit of research and looking at people that have had raised beds, I've got to make a decision on whether to spend on them or not. Please help if you know what the best thing to do is. I haven't actually gone out and spent any money yet, so it'd be nice to know if it's like a must, or you can grow quite easily without them. I've got a little job to do now. Give me little compost Daleks are the ones that I've inherited that aren't in the best condition, so I've bought a new one. I'm going to head over to the allotment. It's a pain because of where they are, but I've got to kind of empty one into another. Of course, one of them's like in the corner of the plot. It just doesn't make sense, like just in the corner, in the area that I'd like to grow stuff, really. And the other one is in the right place. So I kind of only want one, but they're both in a poor state. So I'm going to go sort them out. I'll possibly plant my plums, which I was supposed to do last week. And then I'll let you know what I've decided with my raised beds. Recognise that? Have you ever been in that situation where something just has to fit in the car? I bought it and I didn't know how I was going to get it to the allotment. I just thought I need it, so I'm going to buy it, and it has to fit. And I guess you can guess it's a compost Dalek. So that's job number one, is to get that changed over and put a bit of gear in it so that it doesn't blow away over the next week. And job number two is to make my decision on what I'm going to do raised bed wise, and I'm not sure at the moment. I've done a little bit of research. I'll do a little bit more, and I'll let you know what I'm going to do. So as I was saying at the allotment, now my Daleks, I've got two. This is a perfect place. One's here, but all of them in here, actually, or most of them in here, have got the lids gone. I don't know if people will nick them. I doubt it, to be fair. And that little section there that's missing. I've got two, and I only want one really. And my other one is over here, like just in the corner of my plot for some reason, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But they don't do much without the lids on, I don't imagine. Let me know if I'm wrong. But so my little job for the day is to move gear out of that into this, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but it's got to be done, isn't it? So what I ended up doing was digging out enough so that I could lift it off and shove the new one over. But as you can see, nothing's really, don't know how long this gear's been in there for though, to be fair, but nothing's composted. It's just, yeah, because of what? It's just not the best, but we move. And then what I'm going to do, that's on there, is slowly but surely take everything out of this bin, compost, move it across there, and then I can have like just a uniform, more tidy plot, I think. So, job done. I tell you what, I really do put some trash that other people wouldn't put in their cars in their car. That's why I can't buy a pretty car again. It can't happen. I've got one more job to do before I go. It's 11:30, so it's not breakfast, it's brunch that I'm going in for Christmas, because a lot of people know that what I'm doing. I got some vouchers, which is like, you know, you get them vouchers that are for, you can spend them anywhere, or not anywhere, like you can spend them in like 50 odd shops. I've got a load of those, so I'm going to head off to B&Q, buy my potting mix. It's actually talking about raised beds. I could use it to... As I said, please comment and let me know what you think. My current decision is not to use raised beds at the plot, mainly because of the expense, and also because as I said, I initially had raised beds here that I filled with compost, but over the years I was composting less, and I realised that the soil here in my garden is actually really good, and from my understanding, the reasons for raised beds, as I said before, either you might be putting it on concrete, you might have really poor soil, so you enrich the soil in the raised bed by chucking compost. Aesthetics as well, they just look nicer, and it makes it easier to set out your garden. But because of the quality of my soil here is really good, which I found out from composting this and still been able to produce quite a lot. And also, my allotment plot is actually, as the crow flies, in a straight line, in other words, in that direction, it's about 600 metres, maybe a bit more, I'd say. So the soil, I'm assuming, is the same as the soil I've got here. And I've said before, when I turned it over, it looked really healthy and alive. So that's the reason I'm going for no raised beds. I'm not naturally necessarily a very organised person in terms of in terms of where I'm going to put crops, because sometimes I end up with a few spare tomato plants, for example, and I think rather than bin them, I'll find somewhere to put them, and I'll bung them in alongside something that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I might have a few tomato plants not where they shouldn't be, but rather than chuck them away, I'll just shove them in the ground and see what happens. So that's my worry in terms of organisation and knowing, right, I've got 8 raised beds, that one I'm growing that one I'm growing that one I'm growing that. That's fine, but in an area with sort of no boundaries as such, my one worry is that I'll end up with just stuff everywhere. But we'll see.